Okay, we're back here at the shop. We finally have all the lines in place. Theoretically, everything works now. The system's all plumbed together. And I'm here with Brendan from Dyme to give you an idea of what we put in. Because we use the rattlesnake to make the lines and everything. I wasn't here for that part, but I'm back. And now it's here. So Brendan, what do we got?
So we worked with JJ last time. We ran the rattlesnake prototyping kit from the tank up into the rear of the vehicle where the surge tank is. We took those prototypes away that JJ made last time, and from that we converted them into these lines. The construction of these is it's a Teflon, fully Teflon core, convoluted outside, smooth bore inside with a aramid braid on it here. So high temperature, high pressure.
What kind of pressure?
The burst pressure of this is about 9,500 PSI. Super lightweight, it's only about 100 grams a meter.
So even though this is a direct injection car that you run around like 2,500 PSI, this is still well above anything that fuel system's gonna see.
So we rate this as a maximum working around about 2,000 PSI, but all of your high pressure happens up in the rail on the engine. So everything in this line, I think we run at just 58 PSI is what JJ set the fuel pressure to, which is way within operating limits. And because here it's close to the exhaust, we gave it a little bit of extra heat and rubbing protection with this fire sleeve. The exhaust is going to run through here. But this is very good at rejecting heat as well, so you're not going to absorb very much heat from the exhaust radiating very close to it. So we're pretty confident that this is going to be a design that works well on the track. Since last time too, we didn't show it in the video, JJ added this return line into the tank. So he's created a hole here and tapped a fuel cell bulkhead fitting in here to return whatever the pressure that we're bleeding off from the surge tank back into this tank so that we can normalize the pressure.
We should talk a little bit about the type of fuel system that this car uses. It is a returnless system. So you've got one pump in the tank here, and that feeds through the lines, which heads up this way, and this is a line that Brendan has made that replaces it, up to the fuel rail, up to the high pressure fuel pump, which is driven off the cam, and that's what takes it from 50, 60 PSI up to 2,000, 2,500 PSI. And then that's what feeds the fuel rails and the direct injectors. So that's all maintained up there. But it's a returnless system, which means you get all that pressure there and it stays there and then just gets injected into the engine. Problem with that is, now that we've added this extra component from Radium, it has another fuel pump in it. And that was doing about 100 PSI. And we'll show you that in a second. If you're doing about 100 PSI and then just keeping that extra pressure, double what it was supposed to be in the line. So we had to add this return system. Now it's not a full return system from the fuel rail back. It's just within the aftermarket components, and that's what this extra fitting is right here. So this line is coming back from the Radium fuel surge tank back into the tank to take all that extra pressure and put it back into the tank, all the extra fuel and put it back into the tank. Should we take a look at what's in the trunk of the car?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so now let's take a look at what we actually added here. So here's our Radium fuel surge tank right here. And that's rigidly mounted to the chassis of the car. And then we've got a couple of extra lines going on here. These are the ones from Dyme. This right here is the fuel pressure, and this is the regulator. So the pump inside this tank is taking fuel from the stock tank up through here with this line right here. So that's going to the stock tank. And it's being pumped in there, and then this increases the pressure and pumps it towards the engine. The important part here is that it's got this extra capacity of fuel that's under pressure. So even if the stock tank picks up air from going through a corner hard, which is something that we were totally experiencing on track. That's why we had to run it at a full tank all the time. This should solve that problem. And that's gonna let us run at a much lower fuel level and therefore at a lower weight. So this one goes from the stock tank into the surge tank. This one goes to the fuel rail, and it's regulated here to 58 PSI to more or less match OEM, or this is what our tuner wanted us to run. And then this is the new line that we just added that goes back to the stock tank and returns all the excess fuel and excess pressure. Now the reason that we have to run that, we can't just run that extra pressure to the front of the engine, is because any air that does get picked up will just start to accumulate in that tank otherwise. So this allows the air that gets picked up to just be returned back into the stock tank, so that the surge tank remains totally full of fuel and no air. That way it can actually do its job and we don't pick up air and get fuel starvation in the corners. So there's just a few other things to clean up here. for instance, we need to get a grommet to replace this. This is just temporary. So we can actually have something nice that's going to seal it off from the elements, and also, you know, in the event of a fire or something, you want that to be fully sealed off and safe. So that'll get replaced. This will be locked down a little bit more sturdily. Right now it can move a little bit with G-force, so we're going to lock that down just a little bit more, maybe clean up the lines routing, the wire routing just a bit, but more or less that's how it's going to be. So in theory this works right now. So let's go fire it up, make sure it actually works. And 3, 2, 1. All right, so when I first hit the button, I could hear it click on. That was the relay that was turning on the pump inside the surge tank. I could also see the needle on the fuel pressure gauge here snap up to 58 PSI, so that's pretty cool. So that's all working as intended. The car's a little loud right now because there's no exhaust on it, but yeah, everything's working as intended. One last component is this piece right here. This is an emergency kill switch. So if there's any kind of issue, you can slap that button down, it'll cut all power to the surge tank pump, regardless of what the engine's doing. Whether the engine's on or off, that will cut all electricity to the surge tank in case anything happens to go wrong. All right. So another thing you might have noticed, when I shut the engine off, this all shut off as well. So it's wired in to use the signal from the factory fuel pump. So whatever the factory fuel pump does, this pump also does. Turn the engine on, it turns on. Turn the engine off, it shuts off. So it's pretty seamless. You're not going to get into a situation where it's running while the car's not running and you have to like flip switches. It just works. It just works the way it should. All right, that's it for now. We're going to be testing this out on March 27th with the TRD series. If you'd like to sign up for that event, you can come as well with your Toyota, Lexus, Scion, or whatever you want to call this vehicle. TRDseries.com if you want to come along. And that's at Streets of Willow. So thank you to Radium Engineering. Thank you to DymePSI for helping us get this whole thing together. And I cannot wait to see how well this works. Hopefully we can run a lot lighter and therefore faster. Be sure to subscribe to Supra Mark V to get more Supra content. And if you've got any questions about this setup or anything else on this car, leave it in the comments below. Once again, I'm Nick. You can follow me at Nick Romano Racing on YouTube and Instagram. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.